You'll notice, yeah, I'll just do this. I've got confrontation in huge letters in all caps, because if there's anything arguing online has taught me, it's that the use of all caps automatically makes you right. And because we're louder than itty-bitty accommodationists. Okay. I'm actually really excited to be here doing this debate, because Ben and I have known each other for years. We initially met because we blogged on the same server. And when we met, I was the die-hard diplomat, and he was the firebrand going after everybody and calling them dumbasses. And here, 5 years later, we're now completely on opposite sides. But I think it gives each of us some perspective into this debate. So I'm going to start out by defining our terms. Because I think there's a very broad spectrum of firebrands and diplomats. And there's certain types of each that neither of us plan to address because we agree that they're ineffective. So what are the qualities of a diplomat? We're not talking, or at least I'm not talking about the diplomats who fail to criticize religion. Any here read the Huffington Post? Any Huffington Post readers? A couple? You ever read any of Chris Stedman's stuff? Yeah. Chris Stedman just drives me up the wall, because he seems to be of the opinion that we should never ever criticize religion ever. And I know this isn't the position that Ben takes. Even Ben as a diplomat thinks we should criticize religion. The difference is in how we go about it. Simultaneously, we're not talking about firebrands as being assholes. This guy is not a firebrand. This guy is just someone who's out to offend for the sake of offense. And those people aren't attempting to do anything productive, they're just out to offend. So, that's not what we're talking about when we say firebrand either. And there's some similarities to notice here too. First off, both of us think religion is wrong. It's not only is false, it's bad for society in the whole, and that it should be challenged. The only difference we're talking about is how we go about that. Okay, and we both have a vested interest in changing people's minds, but I'm going to touch on that here in a second. The difference is, I think, for firebrands, for people like me, we think there is a utility to overt and open anger. We don't think it's the only way to go about it, but we think it's necessary, and I'll get to that here in just a second. The other one is, we use mockery, openly, proudly, Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. We think there's a place for it, and we think, once more, there's a social utility for it. But there's other goals. It's not just about convincing the person you're talking with. There's other things we want to do. For one thing, we want to force the conversation. We want to put social pressure on religious people to make sure that they're actively engaging us. And I'm going to assert and defend here in a moment that confrontationalism or being a firebrand is the best way to go about that. Second, we're not just asking the person we're talking to. We're not just trying to open their mind. We're trying to get everybody who's watching, who's looking on. Okay. We also want to alter the atmosphere. For instance, how many of you ever had a Jehovah's Witness come to your door? Everyone, okay. You can read online all these sites that say, if you want to mess with Jehovah's Witnesses, do this. Answer the door naked, yada, yada, yada. Try this. Invite them in, say, please come in, tell me about religion, let's talk about it. But the only catch is I'm going to film it and post an unedited copy to my blog. I've done this 4 times now, and every time they've refused. So what I want to do, being a firebrand, is I'm not just out to change their minds, but I want to create an atmosphere of accountability. I want to bring eyes to this discussion, because I think religion doesn't do well so long as everybody is really scrutinizing it. And lastly, we want to motivate our own. We want to inspire people to go out and fight the culture war. And I think being a firebrand is the best way to do that. Okay, so why confrontation works to achieve our goals. Let me read my notes here real quick. Right. If you all saw my Skepticon 3 speech, you know that I don't think human beings choose their beliefs. I think beliefs are a function of what information is rattling around our brain. And you can test this, like I said, by climbing up to the top of a building and trying to just, by force of will, convince yourself that gravity doesn't work. I mean, this is not within your power to change. So in order to change other people's minds, we have to get other information in there. We have to convince them that being rational is a good thing, and we have to get certain facts into their head. So I'm also about to argue about good ways to do that. One way we know works through cognitive science, and this is why police use it, is good cop, bad cop. So I'm going to say that we don't, that being a firebrand is not the only way to go about it. But I will say that we do augment the diplomat side. very common. In fact, both our blogs, there's been a lot of people who, after getting hammered on mine, go to Ben and say, oh, JT's so mean, and he's been able to say, well, yes, let's talk about this, and it's actually worked really, really well. So we know the good cop, bad cop routine works, and it doesn't work without people like me who are being the firebrands. Second, it's very comfortable to be a religious person in the United States, and I want to take that away. Part of, whoa, hi. Part of what social scientists work are social incentives, and once more I have all manner of sources on this too. But rewards, social rewards like friendship, praise, and social punishments like shame and ridicule really, really work to get people to change their minds when reason doesn't. So I want to remove the personal comfort. Right now, someone can go out into the public and just walk up to anyone and say, I believe Jesus rose from the dead, and feel pretty safe in doing that. And I want religious people thinking, someone might call me out on this. I could be embarrassed if I do this. And there's some utility to that I'll get to in a moment. Okay. How best to apply mockery so it works for us? You can't always mock and get away with this. In fact, Ben said this in his opening, and I agree with him. There's some criteria that needs to be employed to make sure mockery works. One, your position needs to be correct. If you try to mock someone and you're not familiar with the facts, if you try to mock someone and say, yeah, you think McDonald's will make you fat, shows what you know, and then they stomp you on it, you've all of a sudden destroyed any authority you may have and reinforced theirs. So anger and mockery really is a double-edged sword. When applied properly, it forces people to go do research, putting new facts into their head. And so long as we are defending the position that all the facts support, which I think we are, that can only be good for us. And it creates one of two outcomes. People will either read the research and change their mind, or they'll entrench themselves, or become angry at themselves and become even more ridiculous. Either way, this is a win-win for us. Secondly, their position must actually be ridiculous. And I think in the case of religion, they're talking about talking snakes, people rising from the dead, walking on water. It legitimately is. All right. So like I said, shame and ridicule were evolved kind of like we evolved pain. They tell us that there's something going on that needs to change in order for us to get by, to get along. And in some cases, people, if they feel ashamed, will go do research. The problem I have with a lot of diplomats is they'll tell religious people, hey, you're wrong, but you're trying. Good job, keep trying. And I don't think religious people aren't. I think they need to be told that. How often have we had a discussion with a religious person and they've been completely crushed, and you come around the next day and see them using the same argument with somebody else? I think not holding their feet to the fire on doing poor research is kind of the same as affirming it. And it allows them to continue with this behavior without any shame or humiliation attached to it. And I already said that people will often entrench themselves, which helps us. And we'll keep the spotlight on religion's warts. I want to foster a world in which religious people know if they open the conversation about religion, they're going to have to wind up talking about things like the Old Testament God being a complete jerk. I think those things are a lot like cockroaches. They don't do well in the light. And as long as we're always scrutinizing it powerfully and bringing as many eyes to it as we can, we win. And that's something that confrontation does. There's a reason that soap operas thrive on confrontation. Sports broadcasting thrives on confrontation. People love a good fight. It's also a reason that P.Z. Meyer's blog is so popular, and my blog is so popular. And Ben will admit this, sadly. I've only got 1 minute left. Crap. No. It's true. Okay. Okay. Public outrage has fueled just about every major social movement in the country's history. It includes the labor movement, civil rights movement, women's suffrage movement, modernist female movement, gay rights movement, and the anti-war movement of the 1960s and today. Consider something like the Ku Klux Klan, something for which no rational discourse was ever possible, and we managed to marginalize it